What happens when a species that evolved to survive the harshest death world in the galaxy meets aliens who've never known pain, loss, or the brutal lessons that forge unbreakable bonds? Marcus Chen thought he was just another casualty of humanity's first interstellar war, broken, dying, and forgotten in an alien medical facility light years from home. But, when he joked about being bonded to his enigmatic alien nurse, he had no idea he was speaking a truth that would reshape two civilizations. In a universe where most species achieve harmony through genetic programming and chemical compliance, humans remain the only race that forms connections through shared suffering, mutual sacrifice, and the strange alchemy of choosing to care for another being despite having every reason not to. Now, as Marcus discovers what it truly means when a member of the galaxy's most advanced species whispers, "You belong to me," he'll learn that sometimes the greatest strength isn't in conquering your enemies, it's in teaching them what it means to be human. A story about the bonds that can't be programmed, the connections that can't be manufactured, and the discovery that in a sterile universe of perfect beings, the scarred and broken might be the most valuable of all. Marcus Chen had been dying for 3 days, and the irony wasn't lost on him. After surviving 18 months of brutal combat against the Kethran Empire, after watching his squad get vaporized by plasma artillery on the moon of Zirion 4, after somehow crawling through 2 clicks of enemy territory with half his internal organs held together by military-grade biofoam, he was going to die in the cleanest, most advanced medical facility in known space. The Neutral Zone Medical Station orbited the gas giant Meridian like a gleaming jewel, its crystalline structures catching starlight and transforming it into soft, healing radiance. Representatives from 47 different species worked here, bound by ancient treaties that made this place sacred. No weapons, no politics, no war. Just medicine and mercy. Marcus would have preferred dying in the mud. The bed beneath him felt like floating on clouds, its smart matter surface constantly adjusting to optimize his comfort. Tubes and wires connected him to machines that hummed with alien efficiency, monitoring every biological process with precision that would have seemed magical to doctors from Earth. The walls themselves glowed with a soft blue light that was supposed to promote healing in most species. Most species. Humans, as always, were the exception. "Your cellular regeneration rate is decreasing again," said the voice that had become as familiar as his own heartbeat. Marcus turned his head, the movement sending lightning through his shattered ribs. Kestara stood beside his bed, her forearms moving in perfect coordination as she adjusted the medical readouts. She was Altarian, one of the most advanced species in the galaxy, and looked like what humans might have become if evolution had taken a kinder path. 7 feet tall, with skin that shifted between silver and pale blue depending on the light, she possessed an ethereal beauty that seemed almost crafted. Her large, violet eyes held an intelligence that had solved problems humans couldn't even comprehend. Those same eyes now showed something Marcus had never seen in an alien before: worry. "How long?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The throat surgery from 2 days ago had left him sounding like he'd been gargling gravel. "Your species' stubborn biology makes predictions difficult," Kestara said, but her secondary hands were trembling slightly as she entered data into her wrist-mounted medical scanner. "Your body refuses to accept the cellular reconstruction protocols that work on every other known race. It's as if your genetic code has built-in resistance to external healing enhancement." Marcus managed a weak smile. "We're contrary like that. My grandmother always said Chen men were too stubborn to die easy, too stupid to live smart." "Your grandmother sounds wise. She lived through the Beijing plague, raised 6 kids during the water wars, and died at 96 telling the doctor his diagnosis was wrong." Marcus coughed, tasting blood. "Stubbornness runs in the family." Kestara's expression shifted, a subtle change that Marcus had learned to read over the past 3 days. Altarians didn't show emotion the way humans did, but he'd spent enough time watching her to recognize the micro-expressions that flickered across her features like ripples on still water. "Tell me about your grandmother," she said, her primary hands continuing their medical work while her secondary hands clasped behind her back in what Marcus had learned was an Altarian gesture of attentive listening. "You sure? I'm not exactly great company right now." "I am certain. Your neural patterns stabilize when you speak of your family. It may help your body accept the treatment protocols." Marcus studied her face, looking for signs of that clinical detachment he'd seen in the other medical staff. The 4 doctors who'd worked on him had been efficient but cold, treating him like an interesting puzzle rather than a person. The Centaurian surgeons had been kind but distant, offering comfort in the abstract way of beings who'd never truly suffered. Kestara was different. In the 3 days since she'd been assigned as his primary caregiver, she'd shown something that seemed almost like genuine concern. It was probably just professional dedication, but, in a place where he was literally the only human for 50,000 light-years, he'd take whatever connection he could get. She had these hands, Marcus said, holding up his own bandaged hand. Small, but strong. Could thread a needle in a sandstorm or perform field surgery with kitchen knives. During the siege of New Shanghai, she delivered babies in subway tunnels while the orbital bombardment was happening overhead. Kesdara leaned closer, her violet eyes fixed on his face. She was a medical professional? Veterinarian, actually. But, when half the city's doctors got killed in the first wave, she did what needed doing. Marcus felt his breathing ease slightly as he talked, the constant pain in his chest dulling to a manageable ache. She always said the difference between treating a cow and treating a person wasn't technique, it was understanding what kept them fighting to live. And, what kept her fighting? Marcus was quiet for a moment, remembering the woman who'd raised him after his parents died in a mining accident. Love, I guess. Not the easy kind, but the kind that makes you get up every morning even when the world's ending around you. The kind that makes you wrap wounds with your bare hands even when you're more scared than the person you're treating. Kesdara's forearms had gone still, her attention entirely focused on him. Your species forms these bonds frequently? We try to. Sometimes we fail pretty spectacularly, but, yeah, we keep trying. It's probably what's gotten us into so much trouble. We get attached to people, places, ideas that logic says we should abandon. Is that why you enlisted in the military? Attachment to your world? Marcus shook his head carefully. Enlisted because I was 18 and stupid. Stayed because the people next to me became family. Would have died for them, and they would have died for me. Some of them did. The pain in his voice must have been audible because Kesdara's expression shifted again, her skin taking on a deeper blue hue that Marcus had learned indicated strong emotion. You speak of them as if they were genetically related. Might as well have been. Shared everything: food, fear, blood, bad jokes that weren't funny anywhere but in a foxhole. Marcus found himself smiling despite the grief. Thompson used to say we were like a pack of feral cats, too mean to die and too stupid to quit. Thompson was your squad leader? Medic. Best combat doctor I ever saw. Could put a man back together while laser fire was going over his head, singing old Earth songs the whole time. Marcus's voice grew quieter. He died trying to reach me after the plasma burst hit. Could have made it to the extraction point, but he came back for me instead. Kesdara was studying him with an intensity that made Marcus uncomfortable. In her violet eyes, he could see something that looked like fascination mixed with something else he couldn't identify. This bond you speak of, she said carefully, it was not programmed into your genetics? Not chemically induced? Nothing like that. Just happened. Sometimes you meet someone and you just click. Like finding a piece of yourself you didn't know was missing. Even though it causes you pain? Marcus considered this, thinking about all the people he'd lost, all the grief that came with caring about others in a universe that seemed designed to take them away. Yeah, even though it hurts. Maybe because it hurts. The things that matter most usually do. Kesdara's secondary hands had begun trembling again, but now Marcus wasn't sure it was from worry about his condition. She looked almost shaken. Your medical readings have improved 17% during our conversation, she said, checking her scanner. Your cellular regeneration is responding to psychological stimuli in ways our models didn't predict. Maybe your machines just needed to learn how humans work. Perhaps. Or perhaps humans work in ways our machines cannot measure. She moved around the bed, adjusting settings with practiced efficiency, but Marcus noticed her movements had changed. Less clinical, more personal. Like she was caring for someone rather than treating a patient. Kesdara? Yes? Can I ask you something? She nodded, her attention focused on him rather than her instruments. Do your people form bonds? Like what I described? For a long moment, she didn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. We are paired genetically for optimal compatibility. Our relationships are designed for maximum stability and mutual benefit. We do not experience the chaotic emotional attachments that characterize lower species. Lower species? I apologize. That was inappropriate terminology. But that's how you see us, isn't it? Lower, because we feel too much, because we get attached to things that hurt us? Kestera's skin flickered between blue and silver, rapid changes that Marcus had learned indicated internal conflict. I have spent my entire career studying inferior, she stopped herself. Studying other species. I have always believed that emotional attachment was an evolutionary weakness, a flaw that advanced races had overcome. And, now I am watching a human dying because his body refuses to accept help, and I find myself. She paused, struggling with the words. I find myself wishing I could share his pain instead of simply observing it. The admission hung in the air between them like something fragile and precious. Marcus felt his heart rate increase, not from his injuries but from something else entirely. That's what attachment feels like, he said quietly. Wanting to take someone else's pain because you care more about them than you do about yourself. Kestera looked down at her hands, all four of them now trembling slightly. This is highly irregular. I have never experienced such sensations with any patient. Maybe I'm not just any patient anymore. She raised her eyes to meet his, and, in that moment Marcus saw something that made his breath catch. The clinical detachment was gone, replaced by something raw and vulnerable and entirely alien to her species. Among your people, she said carefully, when someone says they are bonded to another, what does that mean? Marcus thought about Thompson dying in the mud, about his grandmother delivering babies in bomb shelters, about all the connections that had shaped his life. It means you belong to each other. Not like ownership, but like you're part of the same thing. Like what happens to them happens to you, and you wouldn't have it any other way. Kestera's skin had gone completely silver, her emotional state written in the light that played across her features. I believe, she said slowly, that I am beginning to understand why your species has survived when logic dictates you should have been destroyed long ago. Because we're too stubborn to die? Because you have found a way to be stronger together than apart. Because you choose connection over safety, love over logic. She moved closer to the bed, her forehands gentle as she adjusted his blankets. Because you have learned to transform weakness into strength through the simple act of caring. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, not physical pain but something else entirely. For the first time since waking up in this sterile paradise, he felt less alone. So I guess we're bonded now, he said, trying for humor but hearing the sincerity in his own voice. Kestera went completely still, her violet eyes locked on his. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, but the words seemed to echo in the space between them. You belong to me. It wasn't a question or a declaration. It was something deeper, a truth spoken aloud for the first time, a recognition of something that had been growing between them without either of them understanding what it was. Marcus felt his world shift on its axis. In 3 words, spoken by an alien who shouldn't have been capable of such feelings, he discovered that maybe dying in the cleanest medical facility in known space wouldn't be so bad after all. Maybe, just maybe, he might have found something worth living for instead. The change in Kestera was immediate and unmistakable. Her skin maintained the silver hue that Marcus had learned indicated deep emotional resonance, and her movements around his medical bay took on a quality he'd never seen before: protective, possessive, almost territorial. It should have been concerning. Instead, Marcus found it oddly comforting. Your cellular regeneration has increased by 32% overnight, she announced as she reviewed his medical data the following morning. Her primary hands worked the holographic displays while her secondary hands seemed to hover near him, as if she needed to maintain physical proximity. Is that good or still in the human bodies or weird category? Both. She paused, her violet eyes meeting his. I have been researching human bonding behaviors throughout the night. The medical database contains extensive studies on human psychology and social structures. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Light reading? Fascinating reading. Did you know that humans in isolation show decreased immune function, slower healing rates, and higher mortality across all age groups? Survival of the friendliest, not the fittest? More complex than that. Kestera moved closer, her scanner humming as it took detailed readings of his vital signs. Your species evolved on what the galactic database classifies as a Class 12 death world. Planetary conditions so hostile that most species consider it uninhabitable even with advanced technology. Marcus knew Earth's reputation among the galactic community. What humans considered normal weather patterns, seasonal changes, and natural phenomena, most aliens viewed as apocalyptic disasters. The fact that humans had not only survived but thrived on such a world had made them something of a curiosity. Yet instead of developing individual survival traits like most species from harsh environments, Kestera continued, humans developed something unprecedented: cooperative survival strategies that made groups exponentially more capable than individuals. Pack hunting, basically. Far more sophisticated than pack hunting. Your grandmother performing surgery during an orbital bombardment while caring for others' children. Your medic Thompson dying to save you despite having his own path to safety. These are not pack behaviors, these are choices that prioritize group survival over individual genetic continuation. Kestera's skin flickered between silver and blue as she spoke, her emotional state clearly agitated. According to evolutionary models, such behaviors should have been selected against. They are inefficient, dangerous, and mathematically suboptimal. But they work. Humans have survived conditions that destroyed civilizations with superior technology and greater individual capabilities. Your species' mortality rate in extreme situations decreases when humans are bonded together, while every other studied species shows the opposite pattern. Marcus watched her pace around the small medical bay, her forearms gesticulating as she worked through concepts that clearly challenged everything she'd been taught about evolutionary biology. "What's really bothering you about this?" he asked. She stopped pacing and turned to face him, her expression more vulnerable than he'd ever seen it. "I am Altarian. We are bred for genetic optimization, our match is chosen by algorithms that calculate maximum compatibility and offspring viability. Our emotions are regulated by biochemical implants that prevent the chaos of uncontrolled attachment." Sounds efficient. It is efficient. It is logical. It has produced the most stable civilization in galactic history. Her voice grew quieter. It has also produced a society where no individual matters more than any other, where loss is simply a statistical variation, where caring beyond optimal parameters is considered a psychological disorder. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Are you saying you're malfunctioning because you care about me?" "According to my medical training and psychological conditioning, yes. I should request transfer to another patient and submit to emotional recalibration." "But you won't." "But I cannot." She moved to the side of his bed, her four hands clasping together in front of her in what Marcus had learned was an Altarian gesture of distress. "Yesterday, when you explained human bonding, something in my neural patterns shifted. I ran complete diagnostics on myself 3 times. No biochemical abnormalities, no implant malfunctions, no detectable pathologies. Then, what's happening to you?" "I believe I am learning to be human." The words hung between them like a bridge neither of them was sure they should cross. Marcus reached out carefully, his bandaged hand covering one of hers. The touch sent a visible shiver through her entire frame. "Is that what you want?" he asked. Before she could answer, the medical bay's door chimed and slid open. Dr. Vorath entered, his reptilian features set in their usual expression of professional detachment. The Kytherian physician had been overseeing Marcus's case since his arrival, and his bedside manner could charitably be described as arctic. "Nurse Kestera," Vorath said, his scaled hide shifting to a darker green that indicated disapproval. "Your shift ended 4 hours ago." "I was completing additional observations on the patient's progress," Kestera replied, but Marcus noticed she didn't step away from his bed. "The patient's progress has been adequately documented. Your presence is no longer required." "Actually," Marcus interrupted, "I've been having some breathing difficulties. Kestera was helping me with the respiratory therapy protocols." It was a complete lie, and, from the way Dr. Vorath's neck frill flared, the alien physician knew it. "But medical station protocols required that patient comfort take precedence over staff scheduling." "I see." Vorath approached the bed, his scanner already active. "Your vital signs appear normal, human Chen." "They weren't an hour ago," Kestera said smoothly. "His oxygen saturation dropped to 87% before I implemented the modified breathing assistance protocol." Marcus tried not to look impressed. Altarians weren't supposed to be capable of deception, but Kestera had just lied with the skill of a career diplomat. Dr. Vorath spent several minutes running detailed scans, his expression growing more frustrated as he found no evidence of the reported respiratory distress. Finally, he turned his cold yellow eyes on both of them. "Nurse Kestera, you have been assigned to this patient for 73 consecutive hours. This exceeds all recommended limits for continuous patient care. The patient's unusual biology requires specialized attention. The patient's biology, while admittedly abnormal, does not require round-the-clock supervision from a single caregiver. You will report to Dr. Millara for rotation assignment within the next 2 hours. Marcus felt something like panic rise in his chest. The thought of losing Kestera, of being cared for by other medical staff who saw him as nothing more than an interesting biological puzzle, was suddenly unbearable. What if I request her specifically? Marcus asked. Patients' rights include choice of primary caregiver, don't they? Within reason, yes. However, then, I'm making the request. Officially. Dr. Voratha's neck frill flared whiter. Human Chen, I must point out that Nurse Kestera's obvious emotional attachment to you represents a violation of professional medical protocols. Her judgment may be compromised. Compromised how? My healing rate has improved significantly since she's been my primary caregiver. My psychological state is better than it's been since I arrived. If her emotional attachment is helping me recover, shouldn't that be considered successful treatment? The Kytherian physician looked like he'd bitten into something distasteful. Emotional attachment is not a recognized medical intervention. Maybe it should be. For a moment, the only sound in the medical bay was the quiet hum of monitoring equipment. Dr. Vorath stared at Marcus with the cold patience of a predator, while Kestera stood perfectly still beside the bed, her skin flickering between silver and blue. Very well, Vorath said finally. Nurse Kestera will continue as your primary caregiver. However, she will submit to daily psychological evaluations to ensure her emotional state does not interfere with proper medical care. After the doctor left, Marcus squeezed Kestera's hand gently. You okay with that? Daily psych evaluations don't sound fun. I will manage. She looked down at their joined hands. Marcus, what Dr. Vorath said about emotional attachment, he is not wrong. By the standards of my species, I am becoming psychologically unstable. How do you feel about that? She was quiet for a long moment, her violet eyes studying their hands as if trying to solve a complex equation. I feel alive, she said finally. For the first time in my existence, I feel like I am making choices rather than following programming. It is terrifying and exhilarating and completely irrational. Welcome to being human. Is this what your grandmother felt when she chose to help others during the siege? This overwhelming need to prioritize another's well-being over your own safety? Marcus thought about the woman who'd raised him, about the stories of her crawling through rubble to reach injured civilians while bombs fell around her. Yeah, I think so. She called it love, but I think it was deeper than that. It was recognition that your life means more when it's connected to someone else's. Kestera's skin settled into a steady silver glow. Then, I choose to be unstable. I choose to be irrational. I choose to be human. Even if it gets you in trouble with your people? Especially then, She lifted their joined hands, studying the contrast between her silver blue skin and his pale, scarred human flesh. You asked me if I wanted to learn to be human. The answer is yes, but not because I want to be like your species. Then, why? Because I want to be like you. Specifically you. The human who jokes while dying, who speaks of love in a place designed to eliminate such inefficient emotions, who somehow makes a genetically superior alien nurse question everything she believed about the nature of existence. Marcus felt something shift in his chest again, that same sensation he'd experienced when she'd first said he belonged to her. But, this time it was stronger, more complete, like pieces of himself he hadn't known were missing suddenly, clicking into place. Kestera? Yes? I think I'm falling in love with you. Her skin blazed silver, so bright that the medical bay's automatic lighting dimmed in response. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics he'd never heard before, undertones that seemed to resonate in his bones. I think I have already fallen. I simply did not know the word for it until now. She leaned down and kissed his forehead, a gesture that was both alien and utterly familiar. Her skin was warm against his, and he could feel the rapid flutter of what might have been multiple heartbeats. Rest now, she whispered. I will be here when you wake. Promise? I promise. I belong to you too, remember? As Marcus drifted off to sleep, he couldn't help but smile. He'd come to this place dying and alone, but somehow he'd found something that made all the pain worth it. Something that made him want to heal, to grow stronger, to become worthy of the gift he'd been given. Something worth fighting for. Outside their medical bay, the galaxy spun on in its carefully ordered way, but, inside this small space, two beings from incompatible species were discovering that love didn't follow the rules of physics or genetics or evolutionary biology. Love followed its own rules, and those rules were about to change everything. 2 weeks into Marcus's recovery, the real complications began. It started with Dr. Millara, the station's chief psychiatric evaluator, arriving unannounced during what had become Marcus and Kestara's daily conversation time. The Centaurian physician stood nearly 8 feet tall, her crystalline skin refracting light in patterns that supposedly promoted calm in most species. Marcus found the effect unsettling, like being examined by a living prism. Nurse Kestara, Dr. Millara said without preamble, your psychological evaluation scores have declined significantly over the past 14 days. Kestara didn't look up from adjusting Marcus's foredrip, but he could see the tension in her movements. Define declined, doctor. Your emotional stability rating has dropped from optimal to concerning. Your objective reasoning scores show systematic bias toward your assigned patient. Most notably, your neurochemical patterns now more closely resemble those of unbonded humans than properly regulated Altarians. And Dr. Milara's crystalline features shifted to display what Marcus recognized as surprise. And such deterioration requires immediate intervention. I am recommending you for emergency psychological recalibration. Now Kestara did look up, her skin flickering rapidly between silver and deep blue. I declined the recommendation. It was not a request. Station Protocol 847 requires intervention when medical personnel show signs of compromised judgment due to emotional dysfunction. My judgment is not compromised. My patient's recovery rate has exceeded all projections. Your patient's recovery appears to correlate with your psychological deterioration. This suggests an unhealthy codependent dynamic that must be severed for the safety of both parties. Marcus had been listening to this exchange with growing alarm. Now he spoke up. What exactly does psychological recalibration involve? Dr. Millara turned her attention to him, her prismatic features cycling through what he assumed were diagnostic patterns. For Altarians, recalibration involves biochemical rebalancing to restore proper emotional regulation. The process eliminates abnormal attachments and returns the subject to optimal psychological function. It would erase her feelings, Marcus said, understanding hitting him like a physical blow. It would restore her mental health. Like hell it would. Dr. Milara's form shifted to a sharper, more aggressive configuration. Human Shen, your primitive understanding of psychology does not qualify you to make medical determinations about Altarian mental health. Maybe not, but I know enough about human psychology to recognize manipulation when I see it. Explain. Marcus struggled to sit up straighter in bed, ignoring the protest from his still healing ribs. You're treating love like a disease. Kestara isn't malfunctioning, she's evolving. Growing. Becoming more than what she was programmed to be. She is becoming unstable. She's becoming free. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Dr. Milara's crystalline skin darkened to an ominous ruby red, while Kestara had gone completely still, her forearms frozen in the middle of their medical tasks. Freedom, Dr. Millara said slowly, is chaos. Freedom is the absence of order, the breakdown of optimal function. Your species' obsession with individual autonomy has led to nothing but conflict, suffering, and inefficiency. It's also led to art, music, literature, scientific breakthroughs, and the kind of courage that makes someone run into enemy fire to save their friends. Statistically irrelevant compared to the damage caused by unregulated emotion. Marcus looked at Kestara, seeing the fear in her violet eyes. Fear of losing what she'd found, of returning to the empty efficiency of her previous existence. Kestara, he said quietly, what do you want? What I want is irrelevant, Dr. Millara interrupted. She is not currently capable of rational decision-making. I didn't ask you. Marcus kept his eyes on Kestara. I asked her. For a long moment, Kestara didn't respond. Her skin continued its rapid cycling between colors, and Marcus could see the internal war playing out across her features. Millennia of genetic conditioning and social programming warred with 2 weeks of newfound emotional awakening. Finally, she straightened to her full height, her skin settling into a steady, brilliant silver. I want to remain as I am, she said, her voice clear and strong. I want to continue caring for Marcus. I want to continue experiencing these feelings, even if they are classified as dysfunction. That confirms my diagnosis, Dr. Millara said with satisfaction. You are clearly not competent to make rational decisions about your own welfare. Then, let me make them for her. Both aliens turned to stare at Marcus. He'd surprised himself with the words, but, now that he'd spoken them, he realized how right they felt. Explain, Dr. Millara demanded. Kestera said I belong to her, and she belongs to me. That makes us bonded, by human standards. Among humans, bonded partners have the right to make medical decisions for each other when one party is deemed incompetent. This is not a human facility. But, it is a neutral facility, bound by the Medical Neutrality Accords. Those accords recognize the medical customs of all member species when they don't conflict with station safety. Dr. Milara's crystalline form shifted to an angry red. You cannot seriously suggest that a human's primitive bonding customs should override advanced psychological medicine. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm invoking interspecies medical protection protocols. Marcus turned to Kestera. Do you consent to our bond being recognized under human medical customs? I don't understand all the implications. It means you're choosing me over them. It means trusting that I care more about your well-being than their definition of optimal function. Kestera's skin blazed brighter. Then, yes. I consent. Dr. Milara's form had gone almost black with fury. This is highly irregular. I will need to consult with station administration. You do that, Marcus said. In the meantime, Kestera stays with me. After the Centaurian physician left, the medical bay fell into tense silence. Kestera moved around the room in agitated patterns, her emotional turmoil written in the constant color changes of her skin. Marcus, she said finally, what have we done? Bought ourselves some time, I hope. And, if they rule against us? Marcus reached for her hand, waiting until she came close enough to take it. Then, we deal with that when it happens. But, Kestera, you need to understand what you're choosing. If you stay with me, if you keep feeling these emotions, you can never go back to what you were before. I know. Your people might reject you. You might lose everything you've ever known. I might. But, I have also gained something I never knew existed. What's that? She squeezed his hand gently. The ability to choose my own path, even if it leads somewhere difficult. The knowledge that my life belongs to me, and I can give it meaning by sharing it with someone I love. Marcus felt that familiar shifting sensation in his chest, the feeling of pieces falling into place. You really understand what you're giving up? Do you understand what you are giving me? Tell me. Kestera sat on the edge of his bed, her four hands settling around his one in a gesture that felt like a promise. You are giving me the chance to discover who I am when I am free to choose who I want to be. You are showing me that existence can be about more than optimal function, it can be about connection, growth, love, hope. Her voice grew softer. You are teaching me that it is better to risk everything for something meaningful than to risk nothing for something empty. That's a very human way of looking at things. Then, I am learning well. They were interrupted by the soft chime of the communication system. Dr. Voritha's voice filled the room, cold and professional. Human Chen, Nurse Kestera, please report to Conference Bay 7 immediately. The station administration will be reviewing your situation. Marcus felt his heart rate spike. This is it. Yes. Kestera stood, her movements sharp with nervous energy. Whatever they decide, I want you to know that these past 2 weeks have been the most meaningful of my existence. Don't talk like this is goodbye. It might be. Marcus struggled to sit up, ignoring the pain that lanced through his torso. Then, we better make sure we win. The journey to Conference Bay 7 felt like walking to an execution. Marcus insisted on walking despite his injuries, partly from stubborn pride and, partly because he wanted to face whatever was coming on his feet rather than lying in a medical transport. Kestera hovered beside him, her forearms ready to catch him if he faltered. Her skin had settled into a deep blue that Marcus had learned indicated determination mixed with fear. Conference Bay 7 was a large, circular room with a domed ceiling that showed real-time views of the space surrounding the medical station. Seated around a crescent-shaped table were representatives from 7 different species, including Dr. Vorith and Dr. Millara. At the center of the table sat Administrator Quell, a Valdorian whose species was known for their diplomatic skills and absolute commitment to regulation. His 12 tentacles moved in complex patterns as he reviewed data on multiple floating displays. Human Shen, Nurse Kestera, Administrator Quell said without looking up from his displays, "You have created an unprecedented situation." "We've found something worth protecting," Marcus replied. Now the administrator did look up, his large black eyes reflecting the starlight from the dome above. "You have disrupted the psychological balance of a genetically optimized being and claimed protection under laws never intended to cover interspecies emotional dysfunction. We've discovered that love doesn't recognize species boundaries." Love. Administrator Quell spoke the word like it left a bitter taste. Dr. Millera has presented compelling evidence that Nurse Kestera is suffering from a form of induced psychological disorder. Her brain patterns now show chaotic neural activity similar to that of unbonded humans, a condition that would be considered pathological in any properly developed species. "Maybe properly developed is the wrong goal," Marcus said. The room erupted in multilingual expressions of shock and outrage. Administrator Quell raised his tentacles for silence. "Explain." Marcus took a deep breath, knowing that the next few minutes might determine both their futures. "Every species represented in this room has achieved stability through control. Genetic optimization, biochemical regulation, social programming. You've eliminated chaos, but you've also eliminated the possibility of growth beyond your original parameters. Chaos leads to suffering. Chaos also leads to innovation, discovery, evolution. Humans survived on a death world not because we were individually superior, but because we learned to adapt, to grow, to become more than the sum of our genetic programming." Administrator Quell's tentacles writhed in what Marcus hoped was thoughtful consideration rather than irritation. "And you believe Nurse Kestera is undergoing similar evolution?" "I believe she's becoming the first member of her species to discover what it means to choose love over programming. To risk everything for something meaningful. At considerable cost to her psychological stability." Kestera stepped forward, her skin blazing with silver light. "Administrator Quell, if I may speak?" "Proceed." "I have served as a medical professional for 43 years. I have treated thousands of patients from dozens of species with perfect efficiency and complete emotional detachment. I was considered an exemplary representative of Altarian medical science." Her 4 hands clasped together in front of her as she continued. "But, in all those years, I never once cared whether my patients lived or died beyond how their outcomes affected my performance ratings. I never once wondered about their families, their dreams, their fears. I was not a healer, I was a biological machine performing maintenance on other biological machines." The room had gone completely silent, all attention focused on the tall alien whose skin pulsed with emotional intensity. 2 weeks ago, I met a human who was dying because his body refused to accept our help. Instead of seeing him as a medical challenge, I began to see him as a person. I learned about his grandmother, his friends, his capacity for love and sacrifice and hope." Kestera's voice grew stronger as she spoke. "And, for the first time in my existence, I began to understand what it meant to care about another being not because I was programmed to, but because I chose to. I discovered that the most important part of healing isn't fixing what's broken, it's caring enough to want to fix it." She turned to look at Marcus, her violet eyes shining with unshed tears that her species shouldn't have been capable of producing. "You ask if I am psychologically unstable. By your standards, yes. I experience emotions that serve no optimal function. I have formed an attachment that makes me vulnerable. I have chosen love over logic." Her gaze returned to Administrator Quell. "But, I have also become more than I was ever designed to be. I have discovered that existence can be about more than perfect function, it can be about perfect connection." The conference bay remained silent for a long moment, the only sound the soft hum of life support systems. Finally, Administrator Quell's tentacles began moving in slow, deliberate patterns. "This decision will require careful consideration," he said finally. "You will remain in protective custody while we deliberate." As security personnel moved to escort them out, Marcus caught Kestera's hand. "Whatever happens," he said quietly, "you've already won." "How?" "Because you've chosen who you want to be. And that's the most human thing there is." Her answering smile was radiant and alien and completely beautiful. "Then, I am honored to be human with you." The holding quarters where they waited for the administration's decision were comfortable by alien standards, which meant they felt like a luxury hotel to Marcus. 2 sleeping alcoves, a small common area with seating designed to accommodate multiple species, and a viewport showing the eternal dance of stars around the gas giant Meridian. They'd been there for 6 hours when the real test began. It started with a soft chime from the room's communication system, followed by a voice Marcus didn't recognize, female, melodious, speaking in perfectly accented Standard Galactic. "Kestara, my daughter." The effect on Kestara was immediate and dramatic. Her skin went completely white, drained of all color, and her forearms began trembling so violently that Marcus could hear her joints rattling. "Mother," she whispered. The voice continued, warm and caring in a way that somehow felt calculated. "I have come as soon as I learned of your condition. The administrators have agreed to allow me to speak with you before they make their final decision." Marcus watched Kestara struggle with emotions he couldn't begin to understand. Among humans, a mother's arrival would be comfort. Among Altarians, he was beginning to realize it might be something else entirely. "I don't want to see her," Kestara said quietly. "She is your genetic contributor," the voice replied, somehow having overheard despite the communication being one-way. "Under Altarian law, she has rights of intervention in cases of psychological dysfunction." The door to their quarters slid open, and Marcus got his first look at an older Altarian. Kestara's mother was perhaps 6.5 feet tall, her skin a pale gold that seemed to emit its own light. Her features were perfectly symmetrical, mathematically beautiful in a way that made Marcus uncomfortable. She looked like Kestara might have, if Kestara hadn't learned to feel. "My dear child," she said, moving toward them with fluid grace. "Look what they have done to you." Kestara had pressed herself against the far wall, her skin cycling rapidly through colors Marcus had never seen before, deep purples and angry reds mixed with flashes of the silver that indicated her bond with him. "I am fine, mother. You are damaged." The older Altarian's voice remained gentle, but Marcus detected something underneath it that made his skin crawl. "Your biochemical matrix has been corrupted by exposure to primitive emotional patterns. But it is not too late. The healers can restore you." "I don't want to be restored." "Of course you don't. That is the nature of your condition, it prevents rational thought." Kestara's mother turned her attention to Marcus, and he felt like he was being evaluated by a predator. "You are the human who has infected my daughter with these destructive patterns." "I'm the human who loves your daughter." Love. The word was spoken with the same distaste Administrator Quell had shown. "A neurochemical dysfunction that your species mistakes for virtue. Do you understand what you have done to her?" Marcus struggled to his feet, ignoring the pain in his ribs. Even standing, he barely reached the alien woman's chest, but he met her golden eyes without flinching. "I've shown her that she has choices. You have shown her chaos. Do you know what Kestara was before your contamination? She was one of the finest medical professionals of her generation. Perfect efficiency, optimal performance, complete emotional stability. She had achieved the highest possible form of Altarian existence. She was a beautiful machine. She was perfect. She was empty." Kestara's mother stepped closer, and Marcus could feel the subtle electromagnetic field that all Altarians generated. Used properly, it was part of their medical abilities. Used aggressively, it was something else entirely. "Human, you cannot possibly understand what you are asking her to sacrifice. Kestara is genetically designed for harmony, for balance, for optimal function. The chaotic emotional patterns you have infected her with will cause her nothing but suffering. Maybe. But they'll also give her the chance to discover who she really is. She is exactly who she was designed to be." "No," Kestara said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "I am who I choose to be." Her mother turned, and Marcus saw something flash across her perfect features, surprise, maybe even hurt. "My daughter, you are ill. This infection has damaged your capacity for rational thought. Come home with me. Let the healers restore you to yourself. This is myself." Kestara moved away from the wall, her skin blazing with silver light. "For the first time in my existence, this is who I actually am, not who I was programmed to be. You were programmed for happiness, for fulfillment, for optimal life satisfaction. I was programmed for compliance." The words hit her mother like a physical blow. The older Altarian's perfect composure cracked for just a moment, revealing something raw and desperate underneath. I carried you for 18 months. I contributed my genetic material to create the best possible version of yourself. I shaped your biochemistry to ensure you would never know suffering, never experience the chaos that destroys so many lesser species. You created a beautiful doll, Kestara said, and there was genuine sadness in her voice. A perfect, empty, compliant doll. I created my daughter. No. You created what you wanted your daughter to be. What you thought she should be. You never gave her the chance to discover what she wanted to be. Marcus watched the exchange with growing understanding. This wasn't just about Kestara's psychological condition, this was about the fundamental question of what it meant to be alive. Kestara, he said quietly, what do you want? Both Altarian women turned to look at him, and Marcus saw the same face wearing two completely different expressions. Kestara's mother showed confusion, as if the question itself was meaningless. Kestara showed something much more complex: hope, fear, determination, love, all mixed together in a way that made her skin pulse with chaotic beauty. I want to choose, Kestara said. I want to make mistakes. I want to feel pain and joy and love and loss. I want to experience existence instead of simply functioning through it. You want to suffer. I want to live. Her mother stood perfectly still for a long moment, her golden skin gradually fading to a pale, colorless state Marcus had never seen in an Altarian. I do not understand, she said finally, and, for the first time her voice carried genuine emotion, confusion, grief, something that might have been love. I know, Kestara said gently. But, I need you to trust that I do. Trust. Another word spoken like it tasted bitter. Trust is faith without evidence. It is illogical. Most of the best things are. Marcus stepped forward, knowing he was probably about to make things worse but unable to stay quiet. Ma'am, he said, with respect, you're asking Kestara to choose between safety and growth. Between existing and living. Between who she was designed to be and who she's discovered she can become. I am asking her to choose sanity over madness. You're asking her to choose death over life. The older Altarian's head snapped toward him, her golden eyes flashing with something that might have been anger. Explain. Marcus thought about his grandmother, about Thompson, about all the people who'd chosen love over safety, connection over isolation, growth over stagnation. Every living thing has to choose between safety and growth. Plants that stay in small pots remain stunted. Animals that never leave their territories never discover what they're capable of. People who never risk their hearts never learn what love can make them become. And people who risk everything often lose everything. Yeah, they do. But the alternative is never having anything worth losing in the first place. He looked at Kestara, seeing her standing straighter than he'd ever seen her, her forearms spread wide as if she were embracing the entire universe. Your daughter has discovered she's capable of more than optimal function. She's capable of transcendence. Of becoming something new, something unprecedented, something beautiful. She is becoming unstable. She's becoming free. The room fell silent except for the distant hum of the station's systems. Through the viewport, Marcus could see the stars wheeling slowly around them, ancient lights that had witnessed the birth and death of countless civilizations. Finally, Kestara's mother spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. If I allow this, if I do not intervene, you will suffer. Emotional attachment brings pain, loss, grief. Your perfect existence will become chaotic and difficult. Yes, Kestara said simply. You will experience feelings that serve no optimal purpose. Yes. You will make choices that may lead to heartbreak and failure. Yes. You will become something that our society cannot understand or accept. Yes. Her mother's skin had gone completely colorless now, like moonlight on still water. And this is what you want? This is what I choose. Another long silence. Then, so quietly Marcus almost missed it, I do not understand, but I will not stand in your way. Kestara's skin blazed so brightly that the room's lighting systems automatically dimmed. She moved across the space in 2 quick strides and wrapped her forearms around her mother in a gesture that was both alien and utterly familiar. Thank you, she whispered. Her mother stood rigid for a moment, then, slowly, carefully, returned the embrace. I hope you find what you are seeking, my daughter. I already have. When they separated, Kestera's mother turned to Marcus one last time. "Human, you have taken my daughter from everything she has ever known. You have made her vulnerable to suffering I cannot protect her from. You have changed her into something I may never understand. Yes, ma'am. If you cause her pain, if you betray the trust she has placed in you, I will find you. And I will remind you that there are forms of suffering that even your resilient species cannot endure." The threat was delivered in the same gentle tone she'd used for everything else, which somehow made it more terrifying than any amount of shouting would have been. "Understood," Marcus said. "But, you should know, I'd rather die than hurt her." Something shifted in the older Altarian's expression, a subtle change that might have been approval. "Perhaps you are worthy of her choice after all." After she left, Marcus and Kestera stood together in the sudden quiet, both of them emotionally drained by the encounter. "That was your mother giving us her blessing?" Marcus asked. "That was my mother choosing to trust my judgment over her own fears," Kestera replied. "For a genetically optimized Altarian, it was perhaps the most irrational thing she has ever done." "Think it'll matter to the administrators?" "I hope so. But, Marcus." She turned to face him, her skin cycling through soft blues and silvers. "Even if they rule against us, even if we have to leave this place, I want you to know that I would choose this again. I would choose you again. Even knowing what it might cost? Especially knowing what it might cost. Because the alternative is going back to existing without living, functioning without feeling, breathing without truly being alive." Marcus reached for her hands, marveling again at the warmth of her alien skin, the way her touch seemed to complete some circuit in his chest he hadn't known was broken. "Whatever happens next," he said, "we face it together." "Together," she agreed. "The most human concept of all." Outside their window, the stars continued their eternal dance, but, inside their small room, two beings from incompatible worlds had found something that transcended biology, genetics, and the careful order of galactic civilization. They had found each other. And that, Marcus realized, might be enough to change everything. The decision came 18 hours later, delivered not by Administrator Quell but by an ensemble of beings Marcus hadn't expected, representatives from 12 different species, including some he'd never seen before. They assembled in the same conference bay, but this time the atmosphere felt different. Less like a tribunal, more like a scientific conference. Administrator Quell spoke first, his 12 tentacles moving in patterns Marcus was beginning to recognize as formal address. "Human Shen, Nurse Kestera, in 47 years of medical station administration, this situation is unprecedented. You have presented us with a question that extends far beyond medical protocol or interspecies law." Marcus felt Kestera's hand tighten around his. Her skin had settled into a steady blue, determined but afraid. "You have asked us to recognize a bond that should not be possible between species with incompatible psychological architectures. You have requested protection for what our best medical science defines as pathological dysfunction. Most significantly, you have challenged our fundamental understanding of optimal sapient development." A new voice spoke, crystalline, musical, emanating from a being that looked like living geometric patterns shifting in three-dimensional space. Marcus had never seen a prism before, but he recognized them from descriptions as the galaxy's premier consciousness researchers. "We have spent the past 18 hours reviewing every aspect of this case," the prism said, their form pulsing with colors that conveyed meaning and frequencies beyond human perception. "We have analyzed brain scans, biochemical patterns, behavioral observations, and psychological profiles. Our findings are disturbing." Marcus's heart sank. "Disturbing," the prism continued, "because they suggest that our understanding of optimal consciousness may be fundamentally flawed." Now Marcus's heart stopped altogether. A third voice joined the conversation, deep, resonant, speaking in harmonics that Marcus felt in his bones. This came from a resonant, one of the elder species that had achieved technological sophistication before humans had discovered fire. "Nurse Kestera, your psychological transformation has been documented in unprecedented detail. According to every model of Altarian neural function, you should be experiencing severe cognitive distress. Instead, your brain shows increased activity in regions associated with problem-solving, creativity, and adaptive thinking." Kestera's skin flickered with surprise. "I don't understand." Nor did we, initially. However, human Shen's presence appears to have triggered dormant neural pathways in your brain, pathways that exist in Altarian genetics but are suppressed by your species' biochemical regulation protocols. Administrator Quell's tentacles writhed in what Marcus hoped was excitement rather than agitation. The implications are staggering. If emotional attachment can activate latent cognitive capabilities, then our definition of psychological optimization may be artificially limiting sapient potential, the prism completed. We may have been treating symptoms as diseases, suppressing capabilities in the name of stability. Marcus found his voice. Are you saying that love makes people smarter? We are saying, the resident replied, that your human concept of love appears to trigger neuroplasticity in ways we have never observed. It forces the brain to adapt, to grow, to form new connections and pathways. The prism's geometric patterns shifted to brighter colors. We have reviewed historical data from dozens of species. In every case where emotional attachments were eliminated or suppressed, we see corresponding decreases in innovation, artistic expression, and adaptive problem solving. Conversely, Administrator Quell added, species that maintain some form of emotional bonding show continued cognitive evolution, even after reaching technological maturity. Kestera stepped forward, her forearms spreading in a gesture of confusion. Are you suggesting that my people have been limiting themselves? We are suggesting, the resident said gently, that your people, like most advanced species, may have chosen stability over growth. Safety over potential. Optimal function over optimal development. A fourth voice joined the conversation, this one familiar. Dr. Milera entered the conference bay, her crystalline form cycling through patterns Marcus had never seen before. I must formally retract my previous diagnosis, she announced. Extended observation of Nurse Kestera reveals that her psychological changes represent evolution, not pathology. Her cognitive capabilities have increased by measurable parameters across all tested categories. Marcus stared at her. You're saying she's actually better than she was before? I am saying she is becoming something entirely new. A hybrid consciousness that combines Alterian analytical capability with human emotional depth and creativity. The result is remarkable. Kestera's skin had gone silver again, but this time it seemed to pulse with patterns that matched the lights from the prism being. What does this mean for us? Administrator Quell's tentacles moved in complex spirals as he consulted multiple data streams. It means this medical station is formally requesting that you both remain here as research subjects for an extended study period. Research subjects? Marcus didn't like the sound of that. Voluntary research partners, the prism corrected. We wish to document and understand this bonding process. To learn whether it can be safely replicated, whether it offers genuine benefits, whether it represents a new path forward for sapient development. The resonant's harmonic voice carried undertones of wonder. You have demonstrated something we believed impossible, that consciousness itself may be more flexible, more capable of growth and transformation than any of us realized. And, if we agree to this research? Kestera asked. You would become the foundation for an entirely new field of study. Cognitive bonding theory. Interspecies consciousness integration. The science of chosen evolution. Administrator Quell moved closer, his black eyes reflecting the starlight from above. More importantly, you would be protected. Your bond would be formally recognized and legally sanctified under new protocols we are developing specifically for this research. Marcus felt something that might have been hope bloom in his chest. We'd be together? You would be together, studied, celebrated, and, quite possibly remembered as the beings who changed our understanding of consciousness itself. Kestera looked at Marcus, her violet eyes bright with possibilities neither of them had dared imagine. What do you think? She asked. Marcus thought about Thompson dying in the mud, about his grandmother delivering babies in bomb shelters, about all the humans who'd chosen love over safety and changed the world in the process. I think, he said slowly, that we came here by accident and found something that might help the entire galaxy learn what humans have always known. Which is that the things that make us vulnerable also make us stronger. That love isn't just an emotion, it's a way of becoming more than you thought possible. The assembled beings waited in respectful silence as Marcus and Kestera considered their decision. Through the dome above, the gas giant Meridian turned slowly against the starfield, its great storm swirling in patterns that had been ancient when the first sapient species learned to count. There's one more thing, Marcus said. If we do this, if we become the poster couple for interspecies bonding, we want to do it right. Explain, Administrator Quell requested. Marcus squeezed Kestera's hand and felt her squeeze back, their different biologies finding perfect harmony in that simple touch. We want to help other beings find what we found. Not just study it, but teach it. Help species who've forgotten how to feel learn that they can choose to grow beyond their programming. You want to become counselors for cognitive evolution, the Prism observed. We want to become teachers for anyone who's ready to learn that optimal isn't the same as possible. Kestara's skin blazed with silver light as she added, we want to show the galaxy that choosing to love, choosing to grow, choosing to become vulnerable in service of something greater, these aren't signs of weakness. They're signs of courage. The resonance harmonics shifted to frequencies that conveyed deep approval. An admirable goal. And one that our research suggests may be not merely beneficial, but essential for continued sapient evolution. Administrator Quell's tentacles performed what Marcus had learned was the Valdorian equivalent of a smile. Then, it is settled. You will remain here as our first bonded research partners, with full facility access, legal protection, and unlimited time to develop your theories and methodologies. And each other, Dr. Millara added, her crystalline form now pulsing with warm, approving colors. I formally recommend unlimited personal time for continued psychological integration. As the assembled beings dispersed, Marcus and Kestara found themselves alone in the conference bay with its window full of stars. The space felt different now, not like a courtroom but like a launching pad, a place where new futures began. So, Marcus said, ready to change the galaxy? Kestara's forearms wrapped around him in an embrace that was becoming as familiar as breathing. I am ready to discover what we can become together. Even if it gets complicated? Especially if it gets complicated. Humans taught me that the most worthwhile things usually are. Marcus looked out at the stars, thinking about the species scattered across all those light years, most of them locked into optimal patterns that had made them safe but static. Maybe, just maybe, he and Kestara could help some of them discover that there was more to existence than mere function. Maybe they could help them learn to choose growth over safety, love over logic, possibility over programming. Maybe they could help them learn to be human. You know, he said, when I joked about us being bonded, I never imagined it would literally reshape interspecies psychology. Kestara's laugh was musical and alien and perfectly right. And when I said you belong to me, I never imagined it would mean belonging to each other and to something larger than ourselves. Any regrets? Only one. What's that? That it took me so long to find you. That I wasted so many years functioning instead of living. Marcus tilted his head to look at her, this beautiful alien being who'd chosen love over everything her species had ever taught her was important. Well, he said, we've got plenty of time to make up for it. How much time? All of it. Every moment, every day, every year we can steal from the universe. Every chance we get to choose each other, choose growth, choose to become something the galaxy has never seen before. Kestara's skin settled into a steady, brilliant silver that seemed to capture and reflect every star visible through the dome. Then, let us begin. And, in a place designed for healing, surrounded by species that had forgotten how to grow, two beings from incompatible worlds began the work of teaching the galaxy what humans had always known, that love wasn't just an emotion. It was evolution. It was choice. It was the courage to become more than you ever thought possible, one heartbeat at a time. Outside their window, the stars wheeled on in their ancient dance, but, inside the medical station, something new had been born. Something that would spread from world to world, species to species, consciousness to consciousness. The understanding that optimal was just the beginning. And that true existence started when you chose to risk everything for the chance to become who you really were meant to be. Together.